Have you ever met someone who made it nearly impossible to love them? Maybe it's a friend who betrayed you, a coworker who constantly criticizes you, or even a family member who wounds you with their words. You try to show kindness, but it feels like your love just bounces back. Rejected and unappreciated. What do you do when loving others feels too heavy? That's the question we must face, because it's in those hard places that the true meaning of love is revealed. When it comes to love, most of us naturally lean toward those who are easy to love. It feels good to love the ones who bring joy into our lives, who make us laugh, who show us kindness and appreciation. We rarely struggle when the person on the other side is agreeable, respectful, and generous. That kind of love doesn't demand much sacrifice because it flows easily from our emotions. But the true test of love is not found in how we treat those who love us back. It is revealed in how we respond to those who make loving them feel impossible. Loving difficult people is where the reality of our character is exposed, and it's often the place where we either grow deeper in love or give up on it altogether. Think for a moment about someone in your life who constantly challenges your patience. Maybe they speak words that cut you down, or they carry an attitude that grates against your spirit. It could be a family member who never seems satisfied with anything you do, or a coworker whose negativity poisons the atmosphere around them. Perhaps it's someone who has betrayed you, leaving scars that haven't fully healed. These are the moments when love stops being an effortless exchange and becomes a decision that demands courage, humility, and perseverance. When you are confronted with a difficult person, everything inside of you may scream for self-protection. Your natural instinct may be to distance yourself, to retaliate, or to give them the same coldness they've shown you. It's easy to justify withdrawing your love when the other person seems undeserving of it. But this is exactly where the deeper meaning of love comes into play. Love was never designed to only function in spaces of comfort. Its true nature is revealed when you are stretched beyond what feels natural or convenient. Loving difficult people is not about ignoring the pain they may have caused you or pretending that their actions are acceptable. Instead, it is about choosing to see them through a lens greater than their flaws. It is about recognizing that every person carries brokenness, and sometimes that brokenness spills out in destructive ways. While this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, it does remind you that the ones who are hardest to love are often the ones who need love the most. It's not about rewarding bad behavior, but about rising above it and refusing to let someone else's actions dictate the condition of your heart. In these moments, love becomes a test not of the other person but of you. It's an opportunity to demonstrate patience when frustration feels justified, to offer kindness when hostility surrounds you, to extend forgiveness when resentment feels easier. Each act of love in these situations chips away at selfishness and pride, and it builds within you a strength that cannot be developed any other way. Loving the unlovable shapes you into someone who is not controlled by emotions, but guided by principle. Someone who understands that love is more than a transaction of feelings, it is a reflection of character. This test of love forces you to ask hard questions of yourself. Will you let bitterness determine your response, or will you allow love to set the standard? Will you shrink back from the challenge, or will you step into it, knowing that the hardest people to love are often the ones who reveal the depth of your commitment to love itself? Each choice you make in these encounters writes a story, not just about how you treat others, but about the kind of person you are becoming. The truth is, difficult people will always exist. You cannot escape them, and you cannot always change them. But you can control your response. You can choose to let those challenges strengthen your ability to love in ways you never thought possible. Loving difficult people pushes you beyond shallow affection and into the depths of what love was meant to be. Something that is not conditional, not fragile, but enduring even in the face of adversity. Would you like me to expand all key points one by one into 600 words each in the same style, so you have a complete long-form speech sermon? Love has often been misunderstood as something that is supposed to be simple, convenient, and effortless. Many people believe that love should flow without cost, that it should always be comfortable and pleasant. But real love is not measured by how easy it is. Real love is proven by the sacrifices it demands. When love is reduced to nothing more than a feeling that comes and goes depending on circumstances, it loses its depth and power. But when love requires you to give of yourself, to endure discomfort, and to put aside selfish desires, that is when its true nature is revealed. Think about the times in life when loving someone meant you had to give up your own convenience. Maybe it was staying up late to care for a sick child when you were exhausted yourself. Maybe it was choosing to forgive a hurtful word instead of holding on to resentment. Perhaps it was being present for a friend who was struggling, even though your schedule was already full. None of those moments were easy, and yet they were some of the most profound expressions of love. Love that never cost you anything remains shallow. Love that requires sacrifice digs deep roots and produces fruit that lasts. Sacrificial love challenges selfishness at its core. Every human being is naturally inclined to prioritize self, our comfort, our preferences, our needs. But love calls us to step outside of ourselves and consider others before we consider what feels best for us. This doesn't mean neglecting your own well-being or denying your worth. It means that in moments of choice, you are willing to put someone else's needs above your own convenience. When you do that, love takes on a richer, more powerful meaning. It ceases to be a matter of convenience and becomes an act of commitment. Convenience-based love is conditional. It says, I will love you as long as it benefits me, as long as you behave in a way that pleases me, as long as nothing is required of me that feels too hard. But the moment it becomes inconvenient, this kind of love disappears. That's why so many relationships fall apart, because they were built on preference rather than sacrifice. When trials come, when people disappoint, when misunderstandings arise, preference has no strength to endure. Only sacrificial love can withstand the storms of life because it is rooted in a decision, not just a fleeting emotion. This is why the greatest expressions of love often come in the hardest circumstances. It is one thing to say you love someone when they are treating you well, but it is another thing to keep loving them when they have failed you, when they have wronged you, or when the relationship becomes costly to maintain. That kind of love is not about what you get, it's about what you give. And in the giving, even when it hurts, love grows stronger. It transforms both you and the one who receives it, because sacrificial love leaves an imprint that words alone can never match. The truth is, there will always be opportunities to choose between convenience and sacrifice. Every day brings moments where you are faced with the decision to either take the easy path or step into the harder way of love. The easy path says, protect yourself, do what feels good, avoid discomfort. But the harder way says, give even when it costs you, stay when it would be easier to walk away, serve when you would rather be served. That harder way may feel draining in the moment, but it is the only path that produces the kind of love that lasts. What separates shallow love from enduring love is the willingness to sacrifice. Anyone can claim to love when the sun is shining, when the circumstances are favorable, and when everything is going smoothly. But when the storms come, when disappointments weigh heavy, and when life asks you to go beyond your comfort zone, that is when real love must stand up and prove itself. It is in those moments that love becomes something far greater than a preference. It becomes a choice that reflects strength, resilience, and devotion. Many people confuse love with the idea of a constant warm feeling, something that always stirs emotion and comes naturally. They assume that if they do not feel love, then they cannot show it. But love was never meant to be limited by emotion alone. Feelings can shift like the wind. They rise and fall depending on circumstances. Decisions, however, hold firm regardless of mood or situation. Love at its core is not simply an emotion you experience. It is a choice you make again and again, even when the feelings are absent or even when they run in the opposite direction. There are days when you will not feel like being patient, when anger seems justified and bitterness feels easier. Yet love chooses patience in the face of irritation. There are moments when forgiveness feels impossible, when resentment promises satisfaction, when replaying the hurt seems like the natural response. Yet love chooses to forgive, not because the offender deserves it, but because the choice to forgive protects your own heart from being poisoned by bitterness. There are times when judgment comes easily, when it is tempting to criticize or condemn. Yet love chooses compassion, remembering that every person carries burdens and brokenness that may not be visible. When you realize that love is a decision, it frees you from being enslaved by your emotions. If love were only a feeling, then you would have no control over it. You would simply wait for it to appear or disappear, and relationships would rise and fall on the unpredictability of human moods. But when you choose to love, you reclaim control. You no longer wait for emotions to dictate your actions. Instead, you act from conviction, knowing that love is bigger than how you happen to feel in a given moment. This is why relationships cannot survive on feelings alone. Marriages, friendships, families, and communities are sustained not by constant waves of emotion, but by consistent decisions to love. Feelings may provide sparks, but choices keep the fire alive. When two people decide daily to show kindness, patience, and forgiveness, even when it feels undeserved, that is when love becomes unshakable. Without that choice, love becomes fragile, easily broken by disappointment, misunderstanding, or offense. Choosing love does not mean you deny your feelings or pretend they don't exist. It means you acknowledge them but refuse to let them govern your response. You may feel angry, but you choose not to lash out. You may feel hurt, but you choose not to hold on to resentment. You may feel distant, but you choose to remain present and engaged. These decisions are not always easy, but they reflect the essence of real love, love that endures beyond fleeting emotions. The remarkable thing about choosing love is that often feelings eventually follow. When you make the decision to be kind, even when you don't feel like it, your heart often softens. When you choose to forgive, the weight of bitterness begins to lift, and healing takes root. When you show compassion, even reluctantly, you may discover a deeper sense of connection to the one you once struggled to understand. Decisions create momentum, and that momentum reshapes emotions over time. If you only love when you feel like it, you will love very little. But when you choose to love consistently, especially when it feels the hardest, you begin to experience the strength and the resilience of true love. It is not a love that depends on circumstances, but one that transcends them. It is steady when life is unstable, reliable when people are unpredictable, and enduring when emotions are fleeting. This kind of love cannot be shaken easily because it does not rest on shifting sands. It is anchored in deliberate choices made every day. Many people misunderstand love as blind acceptance, as if to love someone means to overlook every wrong, excuse every mistake, and allow harmful behavior to continue unchecked. But genuine love does not operate in denial. Love is not about closing your eyes to truth or pretending that pain is not real. True love has the courage to confront reality, to acknowledge when something is wrong, and to deal honestly with the difficulties of a relationship. To love someone does not mean ignoring their faults. It means seeing them clearly and still choosing a path that balances grace with truth. When love ignores truth, it becomes shallow and even destructive. Allowing someone to continue in hurtful behavior without accountability is not love. It is enabling. Pretending that betrayal did not happen or brushing over the wounds caused by another's actions does not heal relationships. It only buries pain deeper where it festers. Love is not passive. It does not stand silently while harm is being done. Real love has the courage to speak truth, but it speaks truth clothed in gentleness and compassion. It does not condemn with harshness, but corrects with humility, always aiming to restore rather than to destroy. Boundaries are an essential part of this kind of love. Setting limits is not unloving. It is one of the clearest expressions of love because it guards both your well-being and the health of the relationship. Without boundaries, resentment grows. Without boundaries, the same wounds are repeated over and over. Love that refuses to draw lines eventually turns into exhaustion or bitterness. By saying, "This is what I will allow and this is what I will not," you protect your heart from being trampled and also give the other person a chance to grow. Love without boundaries is not sustainable, but love that establishes healthy boundaries has the strength to endure. At the same time, truth without love can be just as damaging. It is possible to be so focused on pointing out faults, correcting behavior, and speaking hard truths that you forget the heart behind it. Words of truth delivered without love become weapons that cut deeply instead of tools that heal. That is why genuine love never separates truth from compassion. The two must walk together. When love speaks truth, it does so to lift up, to heal, to encourage change, and to preserve dignity. It does not expose weakness to shame someone, but to help them find strength to become better. Choosing to balance love with truth also means refusing to let the wrongs of others define who you are. When you are hurt, the temptation is to let anger, bitterness, or retaliation shape your response. But love chooses another way. Love acknowledges the pain, honestly refuses to deny it, but then says, "I will not allow what you did to change the kind of person I choose to be." This is one of the most powerful aspects of love. It allows you to rise above offense rather than be consumed by it. In every relationship, there will come times when truth needs to be spoken. Silence in those moments is not love but fear. And yet how that truth is delivered makes all the difference. When spoken with gentleness, even hard truths can strengthen bonds. When expressed with humility, even correction can be received as care rather than criticism. Love never hides from truth, but it also never uses truth as a weapon. It embraces reality, acknowledges pain, draws boundaries, and yet extends grace. That is the kind of love that heals, protects, and endures even in the most difficult circumstances. Human love, as strong as it may seem, has its limits. No matter how determined or well-intentioned we are, there comes a point when our own strength begins to run dry. You can try to muster patience, but eventually frustration takes over. You can try to forgive, but the weight of deep wounds sometimes feels unbearable. You can try to be kind, but exhaustion and disappointment can drain your ability to keep giving. That is why trying to love people solely out of human willpower often leads to burnout, resentment, or indifference. Love that depends only on your effort cannot carry the weight of life's most difficult relationships. To sustain love, you need a source greater than yourself, a reservoir that never runs out. The reality is that every person is flawed, including you. When you expect yourself to produce perfect love out of an imperfect heart, you set yourself up for failure. This is why many people cycle through relationships, friendships, or communities, always ending up disappointed when love fades or conflicts become unbearable. They keep drawing from the same shallow well of human strength, only to discover it empties quickly under pressure. The solution is not to give up on love, but to draw from a deeper source, one that never depletes no matter how often you return to it. That greater source is found in a love that goes beyond human capacity, a love that forgives when forgiveness seems undeserved, that shows mercy when offense feels overwhelming, that offers grace even when rejection has been experienced. This kind of love is not something you can manufacture on your own. It flows from being anchored in a higher love, one that continually fills your heart so that you have something to pour into others. When you are filled with that kind of love, you are no longer loving people just out of obligation or effort. You are loving them from an overflow of what you yourself have received. Think about the difference it makes when you love from abundance instead of scarcity. When your heart is dry, even small demands feel heavy. A simple request for patience feels overwhelming, and minor offenses spark disproportionate anger. But when your heart is continually filled with a greater love, you approach people differently. You become more patient because you know how much patience has been extended to you. You forgive more easily because you are deeply aware of the forgiveness you have received. You show compassion because you recognize how much compassion has been poured into your own life. You are not giving from emptiness, you are giving from overflow. This greater source of love also empowers you to endure in relationships where others may give up. It allows you to remain kind when hostility comes your way, to stay steady when others are unpredictable, and to continue sowing good even when you don't see immediate results. Human strength alone says, I've done enough and I can't keep giving, but love anchored in a source beyond yourself says, I can keep going because I'm drawing from a well that never runs dry. That is the secret to sustaining love beyond human limits. Without this deeper source, love will always feel conditional, given when it's easy, withdrawn when it's hard. But with it, love gains a supernatural quality. It becomes consistent in the face of inconsistency, unwavering in the face of rejection, and strong even in seasons of weakness. This is why some people can keep showing love in situations that would crush others. It's not that they are stronger by nature, it's that they are connected to a love greater than their own. They have discovered that the only way to love beyond limits is to be filled daily with a love that never ends. So often, when we struggle to love others, our instinct is to shift the blame outward. We think, if only they would change, if only they treated me better, if only they stopped doing the things that hurt me, then I could love them. It feels natural to wait on the other person to make the first move, to clean up their behavior, or to soften their attitude before we extend love. But that way of thinking puts your ability to love at the mercy of someone else's choices, and it keeps you trapped in a cycle of frustration. The truth is, the way forward is not about waiting for others to change. It is about allowing love to change you. When you let love do its work in your heart, something powerful happens. You begin to see people differently. Instead of viewing them solely through the lens of what they have done to you, you begin to recognize their humanity, their struggles, and their brokenness. Love changes your perspective so that you are no longer controlled by anger or bitterness, but by compassion and understanding. It doesn't mean that what they did is excused or forgotten, but it does mean that your heart is no longer chained to their actions. Love liberates you from the grip of offense. Allowing love to change you also means taking responsibility for your own responses. You may not be able to control how others act, but you can always control how you react. When you allow love to shape your character, you start responding with patience where you once responded with irritation. You find yourself speaking gently where harshness used to dominate. You begin choosing forgiveness instead of holding grudges. None of this happens overnight, but little by little, love transforms the way you carry yourself in difficult relationships. And as you change, the atmosphere around you begins to shift as well. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that love is meant only to transform the person receiving it. Of course, love can have a profound effect on others. It can soften hearts, heal wounds, and restore relationships. But even if the other person never changes, love always changes you. It refines your character, strengthens your resilience, and deepens your capacity for grace. Love molds you into someone who refuses to be defined by bitterness or resentment. It allows you to rise above the toxicity of others without becoming toxic yourself. When you allow love to change you, you take back your freedom. No longer are you held hostage by the actions of others. No longer do you give someone else the power to determine the state of your heart. Instead, you live from a place of strength, knowing that love has made you stronger than the offense, bigger than the wound, and freer than the bitterness that once held you captive. Love becomes the force that shapes your identity, not the actions or inactions of others. The beauty of this transformation is that it often creates a ripple effect. When you change the way you love, others begin to notice. Your patience, your kindness, your refusal to retaliate can stir something in them that arguments never could. Sometimes the best way to inspire change in others is not by demanding it, but by modeling it. And even if they never change, you walk away changed yourself, and that in itself is victory. Waiting for others to change keeps you stuck, but letting love change you moves you forward. It creates growth in your heart, peace in your spirit, and strength in your character. It proves that love is not only about what you give outwardly, but also about what it produces within you. When you choose love in the face of hurt, something profound begins to happen inside of you. Many people assume that loving others is primarily for their benefit, that by being kind, forgiving, or patient, you are doing something for them. But the surprising truth is that love changes you far more than it changes the other person. Every time you decide to let go of bitterness, every time you choose grace instead of grudges, every time you rise above anger, your own heart is transformed. Love is not just a gift you give away. It is also a refining fire that shapes you into someone stronger, freer, and more at peace. When you hold on to bitterness, you may feel like you're punishing the person who hurt you, but in reality, the one who suffers most is you. Resentment is like a heavy chain around your soul, weighing you down, stealing your joy, and keeping you stuck in the past. Anger may feel powerful in the moment, but it drains your energy and clouds your judgment. The refusal to forgive can create an emotional prison where you replay wounds over and over again, never allowing yourself to heal. But love, real love, sets you free from that prison. Choosing to love does not mean excusing what someone did or denying the pain they caused. It means refusing to let their actions hold power over your future. This inner transformation is one of the greatest gifts love offers. By loving even when it's hard, you discover a strength within yourself that you may not have known was there. You learn to rise above circumstances rather than being controlled by them. You become more patient, more compassionate, more resilient. Love stretches you beyond your natural limits and reveals qualities in your character that only difficulty could bring out. In this way, hard-to-love people become unintentional teachers, giving you opportunities to grow in ways that comfort alone never could. Love also shifts the way you see the world around you. Instead of focusing solely on your own hurt or disappointment, you begin to notice the pain and struggles of others. Compassion takes root where bitterness once lived. You may even start to see the one who hurt you through different eyes, not as a villain, but as a flawed human being in need of grace, just as you are. This doesn't excuse their actions, but it broadens your perspective and softens the hardness that pain can create in your heart. By changing the way you see others, love also changes the way you see yourself. You begin to carry yourself with a quiet strength, knowing that you are no longer defined by offense, but by the power to rise above it. The change love creates in you is also deeply practical. When you let go of grudges, your mind becomes clearer. When you release bitterness, you find peace that anger could never give. When you choose to forgive, you open the door to healing that resentment would have kept locked. Even your physical well-being can improve because the stress of holding on to negativity no longer controls you. Love does more than heal relationships. It heals you. Perhaps one of the most beautiful aspects of this transformation is the freedom it brings. You are no longer bound by what others do or fail to do. Your joy is no longer dependent on their approval or their apology. Your peace is not held hostage by their behavior. Love empowers you to live from the inside out, not the outside in. And as you walk in that freedom, others notice. They may wonder how you can remain calm under pressure, how you can forgive in the face of betrayal, how you can show kindness when you were shown cruelty. What they are seeing is the evidence that love has changed you, making you stronger, wiser, and freer than you were before. Bitterness, resentment, and anger are prisons that keep countless people locked away, often without them even realizing it. When someone wrongs you, the natural reaction is to hold on to that pain, replaying it in your mind again and again, as if refusing to let go will somehow make things right. But in truth, holding on to resentment only deepens the wound. It does not punish the other person. It punishes you. Every grudge carried, Every ounce of bitterness held close chains your heart to the very offense you wish to escape. The one who hurt you may move on with their life, but you remain stuck in the past, trapped in a cycle of anger and unforgiveness. That is why love is not only a gift to others, but also the key to your own freedom. Choosing love over bitterness is not about pretending the offense never happened. It is not about minimizing the pain or excusing harmful actions. It is about choosing not to let that pain become your master. Anger may feel powerful, but it drains your strength over time. Resentment may feel justified, but it corrodes your peace and poisons your relationships. Love, however, releases you from that burden. It allows you to move forward without being weighed down by the heavy baggage of the past. Forgiving and choosing love does not change the past, but it transforms your future by freeing you from the chains of bitterness. There is a certain irony in how we cling to grudges, believing they give us leverage or control. In reality, they control us. They dictate our moods, our choices, even the way we interact with people who had nothing to do with the original offense. That is why releasing resentment is not a weakness. It is one of the strongest decisions you can make. It takes far more strength to let go of anger than to hold on to it. Anyone can stay bitter. It requires courage to choose love. Love sets you free because it shifts your focus. Instead of obsessing over what was done to you, you begin to focus on who you are becoming. You are no longer defined by the wrongs against you, but by the strength of your response. Love turns your attention away from the chains of yesterday and points you toward the possibilities of tomorrow. It opens the door to healing, growth, and peace. Things bitterness will never allow. The moment you release a grudge, you create space for joy. The moment you let go of resentment, you create room for hope. The moment you choose love, you step into freedom. This freedom also affects every other relationship in your life. When you are filled with bitterness, it spills over into how you treat others. Your words become sharper, your patience thinner, your kindness harder to give. But when you are freed from resentment, you approach people with a lighter heart. You become more understanding, more gentle, more open to connection. Love not only liberates you, but also creates healthier, stronger bonds with those around you. The truth is, bitterness and anger are heavy chains, but love is the key that unlocks them. Love allows you to breathe again, to hope again, to dream again. It gives you the strength to walk forward without dragging the weight of yesterday with you. By choosing love, you reclaim your joy, your peace, and your freedom. And in that freedom, you discover that love was never just about others. It was always about you too. Loving others is never about ease. It's about choice, sacrifice, and transformation. The real test of love isn't found in how we treat those who are kind, but in how we respond to those who are hard to love. When we rise above bitterness, when we choose grace instead of grudges, and when we anchor ourselves in a love greater than our own, we discover freedom. Love doesn't just change others, it changes us, and in that change we find the way forward.